everyone, and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global Podcast. I'm Kirstie Magowan, and I'm here with Carlos Casanova. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Kirstie. Hello.
And we're chatting with Andrew Miklas from PagerDuty. Good morning, Andrew, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Morning for me.
Morning. Nice where are you located, Andrew?
Our main office is in San Francisco, so I am there as well.
Okay, gotcha. So Andrew, thank you for joining us. And I know you guys have been pretty busy the last couple of years. I'm sure your days get pretty crazy. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us. So I guess one of the things I wanted to speak to you a little bit about, and we've seen the hype, as some people call it, and the resurgence in other terms from others, but about DevOps and stuff, and how some individuals are saying, maybe it's just for the startups, maybe it's the large organizations really can't implement those sort of concepts and techniques, and then we have others that say no, absolutely not, everyone can do it. So where do you, I guess, stand on that? Is it really for any particular industry or size or maturity level in particular, or do you kind of see it across the board?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that it's certainly the case that it started in certain verticals and in certain company sizes. I mean, I think tech companies is definitely kind of where it began, and tech startups in particular, I think is definitely kind of the center of the lane for where this trend started. But we're actually seeing it be picked up across the board, different verticals. So things like media companies, even financial companies, and companies of all sorts of sizes. We actually, one of the things that we do is spend a lot of time talking to bigger, big enterprise companies, about, okay, well, how can we go faster in terms of how we, get software out to the world? And one of the topics that comes up is, well, adopting these mindsets that are very prevalent in IT-focused tech startups, and one of those, of course, is DevOps. So yeah, I think in the long run, actually, this is going to be a thing that has to be understood across the board.
So I know one of the terms that individuals keep bringing up, sort of this bimodal kind of idea for the larger organizations. And is it bimodal, and it is discussion that it's multimodal? Some say 4, some say there's all different threads on that, because I mean I see with some of my clients they've quote unquote adopted it, but I see that they've adopted certain aspects, and in other cases you kind of left some of the tougher parts behind, and I don't know if that's actually harming them more than helping them. Where do you see that with the big organizations? That's where I see, once the politics start coming into play in the organizational change, they're not so enthused by it any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we see in terms of the bimodality is not that companies are trying to switch sort of wholesale to like DevOps and just like throw out the centralized ops, have a NOC playbook, but they're looking at it from more perspective like, okay, this particular software system, how do we need to operate it, right? And particularly older systems or systems that are very critical to the business, those will be the ones that they're sort of least wanting to experiment with, and those will kind of keep on sort of the old centralized ops, at least for now, methodologies. But newer stuff, right? Things that are more peripheral to the business, or things, new projects, right? Greenfield development. Those are the ones that they're more willing to kind of experiment and adopt more of the DevOps playbook and see like, okay, what if we just sort of set up a team that's going to independently build and operate this service without kind of having to get it onto under the management of central ops? How would that look, right? And that's kind of how we're seeing that bimodality, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's something that takes that scariness away from people who like that control over total change management, that nothing changes without me knowing about it. But if you start that way, that whole bimodal approach, and do it on the to start with on those less important apps and the things that are peripheral to the central business. I think that yeah, it's a little bit more gentle on those traditional change management specialists who might get a little bit worried about the whole DevOps idea.
Yeah, exactly. And the question is, is it going to stay, like, is DevOps going to stay on just those kind of less critical projects? Or, once organizations get comfortable with it and see, okay, actually this is letting us evolve these software systems much faster, are they going to be, more willing to kind of explore those ideas even in things that are more central to their business? And my vote would definitely be on the latter there. I mean, we sort of see that at PagerDuty, right? Like we have aspects of the system that are ourselves very critical, making sure alerts go out on time, and things that aren't, like our, for example, reporting components. It's okay if those go down, for a little bit of time now and then. But we use DevOps across the board because we find that it's just what we lose in terms of sort of change management and control, we make up for it in terms of speed, right? Being able to correct problems very quickly when they happen. And I think that the rest of the industry is going to eventually come sort of to that realization, and it just takes time. It takes comfort as people sort of see the benefits of this in their less critical systems.
Right. Yeah, I guess one of the things that I've seen is, I guess, getting that feedback is really the key, right? I just see some organizations, they try to put in place the structure on the sort of forward part, but the feedback doesn't seem to either get there or to where it needs to, or it's not in the condition and quality or accuracy maybe that it needs to be to get that feedback cycle working the way I think it should. I just see a lot of gaps in some of the larger organizations that try to implement that. Is that just a maturity aspect that you think is in play, or is there maybe something more systemic in larger organizations that might slow that down?
When you say feedback, do you mean like at a technical level, like groups don't understand when their systems are not working right, or I guess what exactly did you mean by feedback?
Well, just for the correction. So you were saying you just mentioned about doing the changes and whatnot. What I see is that they're not necessarily getting the right, hey, this is what isn't working properly, or maybe they're not putting the mechanism in place to capture. You just rolled something out and it's not exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, and I think that's that actually is mainly a tooling problem. As businesses start to, basically as groups become responsible for their systems, both the building of it and how they operate in production. I mean, one of the other things they have to do is have a very, very clear understanding of, like, well, what is the business need that you're trying to solve with this piece of software that you own, right? Like, you own the software, you own how it works in production. You also need to understand, well, what is the impact you want to have on the business with this, and how are you going to measure that? And I think that takes kind of a slightly different mindset than maybe a lot of engineering staff or even operations staff has had in the past, right? It means not instrumenting kind of like exclusively anyways on like, okay, well, is CPU going to 80%? Is that a big problem? Maybe, maybe not. But if you can trace it all the way to, well, the business is losing a lot of money, that probably is a big problem, right? And you have to, I think, as an industry, we have to start figuring out, okay, how do we build software and how do we build the tooling to help people gather that information, make decisions around that, rather than taking a very sort of technology systems micro approach that operations has taken in terms of understanding system behavior in the past.
Right.
Yeah, so getting that business focus is really helps the whole DevOps cycle, I guess. And that's a conversation we had a lot in recent podcasts that we recorded in London at the ITSM conference. There was the really getting that business focus and understanding that what you're doing is not to keep computers running, it's actually to enable the business to do what they're supposed to be doing. And it sounds like using DevOps properly is going to help that side of things.
Yeah. It naturally puts the focus on that kind of thinking, and I think also it actually leads to a much more rewarding, I think, place for the engineers and the operations staff to be, right? Like they can much more directly identify with how what they do day to day is driving their businesses forward, and I can see only good things from that.
Yeah. I mean there's been yeah, even outside of the technology space, there's always been discussions around the incentives of individuals, and I think that the DevOps does start introducing a little bit more of the I own a part of this result at the business level, because they can really relate to, hey, I put this out there and it didn't work and business isn't running. Yeah, it's pretty clear. It's that was me. So I guess I definitely can see, and I think that's maybe where some of the breakdown happens, is maybe people that transition, but they still leave some of the legacy approach on. I'm just going to wait for that feedback, and they don't have that cycle, and they don't really see the correlation between what they did and what's happening.
Yeah, I think one way that we've seen. One thing that we've sort of seen companies do with their operations groups and aspects of their engineering groups that kind of help with this a little bit is sort of recasting bits of it, like changing their ops groups from like these are the guys you kind of throw your software over the wall to, and they'll handle running it, and you can just go off and build the new stuff, into guys that sort of help provide internal tooling, right, or help procure tools like PagerDuty plus all kinds of other stuff, and assemble it to make it very easy for the people who own the software inside the business to understand if they're hitting those business objectives, and working basically almost acting as like consultants, right, working with those individual engineering groups to go like, hey, are you actually able to understand, are you having the business impact that you need, and if you're not, explain to us what you would need to do that, and we can help, kind of create the tooling, or take these next gen tools that are very easily extensible and kind of help produce the glue code to hook them all together to build a solution that will work for for this business internally. So that might be a technique to sort of help with that transition as well. Just sort of recasting how you think of your ops groups and what sort of they do day to day.
Right. So I guess one of the things, so you guys are doing a lot of DevOps internally and stuff. So how does that translate into the value that PagerDuty is providing to to your organizations? Is it a turnaround time? How does that translate? I mean, because obviously you have some large clients. I mean, they're not going to keep you around if you're not satisfying their needs. So how does that translate into that?
Yeah, I mean, looking sort of back at how we built PagerDuty and how we operate it, I'm not sure that we could have done it in any other way. The thing is, we talk about sort of agile development, right? And typical San Francisco tech startup, this is what we try to do, right? We want to have very fast turnaround cycles in terms of like, building a feature, launching it, seeing if it works. If it doesn't work, pulling it back, changing it, launching it again. And I think the sort of software world has understood this iterative development model very well, and that's been going for quite some time. But in operations, from an operations sense, especially with very mission critical applications like PagerDuty, there's not been that same mindset, right? It's okay, let's slow down, right? Safety means slow it down, right? We're going to understand what we're going to put out. We're going to write the operations manual, write all the steps down in the binder in case this happens, that happens. Really figure it all out, and then we'll put things out. But the thing is that what's the point of doing agile development then if like the engineers are going at a mile a minute, and then it's like, okay, now to get it actually into production, I got to wait 6 months while the ops guys kind of figure out how to operate this, right? The engineers very naturally basically are going to be like, you know what, I'll just set up an AWS instance, run this myself, and I'll be responsible for it. So I think DevOps inside of PagerDuty is what has allowed us to offer this high availability service that we're actually developing, the same way that you would develop, maybe a less critical B2C kind of product where it's, just kind of knock features out, see what happens, and turn them around very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you this morning, Andrew. I think looking from Carl's face, there's a lot more questions he'd like to ask you, so maybe we'll have to do this again sometime. That actually gave me a lot of information that helped me understand the DevOps world a little bit better too. It was a really good conversation. So thank you a lot for your time today.
Thank you, Andrew.
Problem. Thanks, Carlos. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.